What's growing on, gardeners? It's Friday, July 14th, and the heat and humidity is absolutely ravaging my garden here on the southeastern coast of North Carolina. But thanks to a recent discovery I made, I am still growing strong. That's why on today's video, I'm going to show you a technique that can help you grow your summer plants like tomatoes, cucumbers, squash, deep into the summer, longer than you ever thought possible. This can seriously change the way you grow summer vegetables forever. Seriously, you just have to see this. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe and hit the bell to receive new video notifications, and check out our Amazon store and Spreadshop links in the video description for everything I use in my garden and awesome custom designed apparel and other gear. Your support is greatly appreciated. The airborne and soil-borne diseases are just out of control. You can see all of these tomatoes and cucumbers are dying from wilt, and there's really no way that you can prevent this once this sets in. There is no cure. All of my determinate tomatoes are pretty much done for the year. They're all burnt up and died back. The dwarf tomatoes are covered in disease and they're mostly done for the year. And the indeterminate tomato vines that are still alive are having their fruits ruined from the sun and from the rain. All of that damaged fruit that you see right there is due to rainfall hitting it and the sun scalding it. I mean, just look at the fruits on those plants. They are absolutely destroyed. None of these are really able to be harvested or eaten. All they're doing is just attracting pests. So the sun here is just too strong, and it is causing all of my fruits to burn, and then they get wet, and then they burst, and then they become magnets for pests. So all of these plants, for the most part, are pretty much done for the year. In the 6 years that I've lived in North Carolina, my garden always gets killed this time of year. It is just too hot, humid, and wet in the middle of July for it to survive. And up until this point, I haven't been able to do anything about it. After years of searching for a solution to this problem, I finally came across one and hit a grand slam out of the park. What I did this year was I started a straw bale garden, and I grew the straw bales under a hoop structure with the intent of covering it with this 40% shade cloth during the summer months to see how my garden would perform. Now, the good news is that the technique I'm going to show you in this video is not going to require you to build a big structure like this, so don't worry about that. However, I simply must show you what's under here so you can see the results. Come on in and take a look, because it is incredible. All of the summer vegetables that are planted under this hoop structure were the first things that I planted all year. So they are even older than the plants in my garden. So theoretically, these should be even more ravaged by disease. But instead, they are doing fantastic. There is very little disease on any of these plants. They're all up to the top of my hoop structure and more, which is at least 8 feet tall. And the production is great. There is no sun damage, there is very little splitting, there is very little disease. And they're doing so well that they're just vining out of control all over the place. Just look at all of the big beefsteak tomatoes that are still on all of these reasonably healthy vines. I mean, I've never had tomatoes live this long, let alone thrive. It is absolutely incredible that I'm still getting large heirloom quality beefsteaks growing underneath the shade cloth. And it is not limited to tomatoes. These are my original cucumbers that are literally 10 feet tall at this point. They are still setting fruits all up and down the vines, whereas the cucumbers out in the open in my garden are dying. It's just amazing. Here's some new cucumbers that set right here. This is a brand new plant that I just planted as another crop, and because I like to succession plant my cucumbers. And as you can see, it's starting to get their very first baby cucumbers on the bottom. So everything that is growing underneath this shade cloth is just thriving by comparison, whereas everything out in the open is pretty much dead for the year. The reason why these plants are doing so great under this shade tunnel, whereas everything out in my open garden is dead for the season, is threefold. Number one, the biggest reason is because this shade tunnel is greatly reducing the amount of UV and sun damage and heat stress on these plants. It is like a different world under here. My plants are getting roasted by our incredibly extreme UV index strong sun this time of year, whereas all of the plants under here are keeping cool. So the reason why overall they're so much healthier is because they are less stressed out. And plants that are less stressed are less likely to get disease, they're less likely to attract pests, and they're less likely to have issues like moisture regulation, so their fruit is less likely to burst and split on you as well. The second reason is this shade cloth over top acts as a means of rainfall suppression. Now, when it rains really hard, it still rains through the shade cloth, obviously. However, when it rains intermittently or lightly, I can walk under here and pretty much stay dry. And even when it rains torrentially, it does significantly lower the rate of rainfall. So my plants aren't getting as wet, which is helping to lessen the disease, and it's also stopping the fruit from bursting, because when your fruits, like your tomatoes, get saturated with rainwater, they tend to split and burst as a reaction. So keeping them a little drier helps out. And the third reason is this shade cloth is also acting as a bit of an insect netting. Some flies are still getting in here when I get tomatoes that do spoil on me. However, it's keeping most of the bad pests off. So that is keeping my fruit in better shape. They're less likely to be marred by things like stink bugs or eaten by grasshoppers. And then you also don't have those sucking pests like your leaf-footed bugs and your stink bugs going from plant to plant spreading disease. So having less insect pests is also a big advantage. I also haven't had any worms or caterpillars in here. And it also keeps the birds off too. Now, I've been singing the praises of this method of gardening all year long. I've been telling you about straw bale gardening in order to keep soil-borne diseases lower, and I've been telling you about the shade cloth to keep your plants healthier by keeping them less stressed out in the heat of the summer. And many of you have heeded this warning, and you've gone out and bought a lot of shade cloths, which is great, and I know that's going to help your garden. However, there is a problem with this method because a lot of people simply don't have the backyard size or the physical ability to erect some kind of structure like this, and they may not just want to buy a shade cloth and just throw it over their plants. It may not work out for them very well. So if you don't have the ability to construct a structure like this, a lot of these videos haven't been helpful for you. So I made sure to develop a method that I thought would help everybody, and it wouldn't take really any work at all. And I've been waiting all season to see the results, and now I'm confident to tell you that it really does work. Check this out. All homes come equipped with soffits, which is this overhang in the roof that goes over the roof by about 2 feet. And the purpose of the soffits is to both hold rain gutters and also to whisk away any rainfall that overflows the roof, so it doesn't fall flush against the foundation line and erode the foundation. It will fall about here instead, so you won't get that erosion. So what I've done is I've used the soffit on my sunroom to my advantage, and I've used it to grow plants underneath. And this has the ability of both keeping rainfall off the plants and keeping them artificially in shade. As you can see, my entire yard right here is in full sun. It gets about 12 hours of nonstop sun this time of year. However, because of this soffit right here, I'm getting my plants only about 7 hours of sun. It's keeping them in artificial shade because of the way that the house blocks the sun. So they're getting a lot less solar intensity, and they're staying completely dry at all times. And what I've seen based on these results is dramatic. The pepper plants are lush and green, and they are loaded with fruits with no hint of disease. This was a late seedling that I started this year that's coming along nicely. This is my 3.5-year-old pepper plant I've been overwintering since 2020. And then this is my big beef tomato that I rooted from a sucker from my big beef tomato in my garden that is now in the process of dying. And this tomato right here being grown underneath this soffit is completely free of disease, despite the fact that the tomatoes out in the open are getting destroyed. And what is also amazing is it's still setting fruit, despite the fact that our nights are 80 degrees right now and our days are 95 degrees. So I am still getting pollination. Now, normally this time of year, it is way too hot and humid to pollinate a beefsteak tomato, but they're staying so artificially cool under this soffit that I just come out in the morning and I vibrate these flowers with an electric toothbrush, or I give them a really good shake like this a few times to simulate a vibration, and I have been able to get them to set fruit even in our absolute worst heat, which I have never been able to do out in my sunny garden. So while you may not have the available space or the physical ability to set up a big shade tunnel structure like I do, I know that you have these soffits all along your house that you could grow under, and you can use them strategically for protection from rainfall and protection from the extreme sun, where you can give them several more hours of shade throughout the day. So by simply planting your beefsteak tomatoes in 20-gallon fabric grow bags or other large containers, and your peppers in 3-gallon grow bags or other large containers, or whatever your sensitive crops are that don't do well in the heat and rainfall, like zucchini or watermelon or cucumbers or whatever else you have trouble with, you can grow them under your soffits and keep an artificial microclimate for them so they stay healthier for far longer into the summer. And you can even get pollination in hot, humid areas where it was previously impossible out in the open, where there is too much sun and the temperatures are too high. So again, by comparison, here is my big beef tomato in my garden, which admittedly doesn't look too bad up top, but down in the middle section and the bottom, it is getting absolutely destroyed, and it's too hot to set any fruits, and the fruits that are still existing are all getting sun scald, and the plant is pretty much riddled with disease and probably not going to last too much longer. And again, here is my big beef growing in the 20-gallon fabric grow bag under my soffit, which honestly looks like how my tomatoes look in early May before the bad heat and humidity sets in. You'll see it is blemish free. There's no disease on it. It just is looking fantastic overall. It's setting nice big fruits. They're not being affected by the sun because they're kept nice and cool in the shade here. And then more fruits are setting as it goes up. And then even the new flowers, they are looking really healthy. And I think there is a chance, as long as we keep vibrating them, we will get pollination. So now that I'm confident in the results and I know this method works for a fact, I just wanted to show you this and give you other options to grow your plants where you may have thought that your climate was otherwise inhospitable this time of year. I will still plant my spring crops of tomatoes and cucumbers out in my garden and in my shade tunnel in full sun. However, from now on, I will forever have backup tomato plants that I plant later in the season underneath the soffits of my house with strategic shade protection so they stay artificially cool, they never get wet from the rainfall, and because they're not getting wet and they're staying strong, they are much less likely to get any kind of diseases and be attacked with any kind of pests, because pests and diseases are attracted to stressed out, unhappy plants, which is what you get in the sun in the middle of summer. So if you can keep your plants cool and thriving and still give them that 6 hours minimum sunlight every single day that they need to fruit, they will be tremendously happier, as you can see by the incredible results that I have growing on here. So I wanted to take this time and show you this incredible method of gardening that you probably have access to, but you may have never considered. So everybody, I sure hope you found this video helpful. If you did, please make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and please ring that notification bell so you're notified when we release more videos like these. If you're curious about any of the products that I use to build my shade tunnel, that I use in my garden in general, or things like the containers that I use to grow my tomato, pepper, and other plants, I have them all linked down below in my Amazon storefront in the video description, and I'll drop some direct links to those containers as well if you're interested in picking up some. And while you're there, check out my spread shop for custom merch if you want to support the channel. Thank you all so much for watching, and I hope to see all of you again on the next video. Dale, what are you staring at? You're being weird, dude. Every time I walk into the living room, you're just staring at something, and I don't know what. You gotta relax, buddy. I think between the fireworks and all the thunderstorms we've been getting every single day, it's messing with your head. You're going crazy. You gotta settle down, my friend. Settle on down.